Alright, you guys, so today's lesson we're looking at some basic operations with complex numbers. Remember, a complex number is a number that can be written as a plus bi. We've got our real part and our imaginary portion, I guess, right? So one little thing you're going to run into in the lesson, the additive inverse of a number. All that means is its opposite. Okay, here's a bunch of examples. 3x, what's the opposite of 3x? Negative 3x. 1/2 x, what's the opposite? Negative. Notice you just switch the sign. Negative x, x. 2i, negative 2i, so on and so forth. You can look at that. So if you run into questions that say, hey, find the additive inverse of, you're basically just doing the opposite of that number. Notice I put in parentheses. You want to take that negative all the way through. So this would be negative 2 plus 3i. Notice you just changed both of those signs. This one, can you see what we're doing? It would simply be 7 minus 5i. So those are pretty straightforward. How about some other basic operations with complex numbers? I like to kind of think of like terms. So you can add the real to the real and the complex or imaginary to the imaginary. So what's 7 plus 5? Well, that's just 12. What's 3i minus 4i? Well, that would be negative 1i, and you don't need to write a 1 in front of it. What if we subtracted? Well, just be careful, this negative needs to go all the way through, right? So in fact, I could just maybe change that right at the start, and then it's the same type problem. 2 plus 3, okay, that's 5. Negative 5 minus 2, so it would be negative 7i. Not too bad. The biggest mistake, it's easy to do, but you'd forget to take that negative all the way through, apply it to everything. How about if we multiply things? Let's distribute this. What's 8i times 4? Well, that would be 32i. 4 times 8 is 32. You just have an i there. 8i times negative 3i. Well, that would be negative 24i squared. Now, let's just simplify this a little bit. Let me come up here and show you something. Remember, I is the square root of negative 1. Well, if you did square root of negative 1 times square root of negative 1, or square root of negative 1 squared, you get negative 1, right? So I squared is just negative 1. So this would be 32i plus 1, negative 24 times negative 1. And then let's just rewrite it, make it look like a plus bi. So we're going to change the order. 1 plus 32i. Okay? How about this? Just multiply it out. So let's distribute. So the 3 is going to multiply through both of these. Then the negative I, going to multiply through both of those. And then let's combine like terms. So 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times 4i is plus 12i. I'm writing on kind of a weird slant today for some reason. Negative I, let's take that through. So that'd be minus 5i. And minus I times 4i would be minus 4i squared. Again, let's just clean it up. Now these will combine. And remember, I squared is negative 1. So this actually becomes negative 4 times negative 1. So this is actually plus 4. So 15 plus 4 is 19. 12i minus 5i is plus 7i, right? 12 minus 5, 7. Yeah. Now, one other big thing you're going to run into is start solving some basic equations. Now, you've been doing this before, okay, so really not new today, except you're going to have an I in your answers. So we want to solve for x. So let's get that by itself. Let's subtract this over and divide by 4. So in fact, let me do it underneath. So x squared equals negative 324 over 4. Of course, we can reduce that a little bit. Let's see, 4 will go into 32 8 times, and then 1 times. So this is negative 81. So we've got x squared equals negative 81. Square root both sides. Of course, we have a negative under the radical. That just means we're going to bring an I out. And what's the square root of 81? Well, it's 9. So x equals plus or minus. Remember, we're going to introduce that plus or minus when we do square root of both sides. 9i. Hey, not too bad. How about this one? Very similar, right? That's not supposed to be a 196, though. It's supposed to be a 169. Sorry about that. So, x squared equals negative 169, subtract it over 196. Now those are a little bigger numbers, maybe not as comfortable, so maybe we just bring up a calculator, right? Excuse me. So I could type that right into Desmos, and well, we're gonna, in fact, before I do that, let's do the square root of both sides, right? I guess we could see if it will reduce. It won't. So let's square root both sides. Very similar to what we did that other problem. So I get plus or minus. So x equals, well, let's go ahead and just type in here square root. The negative we know is just going to mean it has an I in the answer, right? So square root of 169, and I can use my keyboard or just type it here, divided by, notice how I put it in fraction form, that's pretty cool, 196, and it gives me this ugly number there. Let me type my fraction button. Oh, that is 1314. Square root of 169, 13, 196 is 14. So this actually simplifies to, get my pen back here, plus or minus 13/14 times I. Okay, so those are kind of an overview, types of problems, big types of problems. It's also going to have you do some basic things with fractals. You'll basically just substitute in to some complex function and get values, but I think that's pretty straightforward. So hopefully this will help you with the lesson today.